This will be a very interesting video. This man you're looking at on the screen used to be a raging atheist, as he put it, because he used to pick fight with anybody who believed in God, trying to denounce the existence of God. But he recently had a conversation with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT convinced him God exists. And after that, he had a supernatural encounter with God. You have to see it to believe it. Take a look.
For the past 11 years, I was a staunch atheist, and recently I had this experience that completely changed my worldview. I came to the conclusion that God was real, and his son, Jesus Christ, came to earth, was crucified, and was resurrected. So I grew up in the church. My dad is a minister, and he started preaching when I was about 9 years old. Before then, we went to church 3 times a week at this tiny little Nazarene church in Elk City, Kansas. So shout out to the Martas if you're watching. The world that I grew up in was one where you just kind of mentally kept track of who was and wasn't a Christian, who was a Catholic, who was a Baptist, who was a Lutheran, who was a Calvinist, so on and so forth. It was deeply ingrained in everyday life. To me, there wasn't really anything special about my faith because it was just so normal. And I think because of this, it developed this fascination with people who didn't believe in the same things that I did. I spent 25 years in a faith that I just saw as this monotonous routine. And because of that, I got to a point where I had to really ask myself, like, do I actually believe in any of this? And I could not get myself to say yes. So at that point, I was an atheist. And over the next few years, I dove headfirst into like atheist podcasts and books and movies and YouTube channels, you name it. So during that time, I turned into this really angry, militantly atheist person. And it cost me friendships. It drove a wedge between myself and my family. Like, I used to try to come up with the most offensive anti-Christian things I could think of and post those online because I was trying to pick fights with people. Like, I wasn't just into arguing against religion. Like, I was good at it. So after 4 or 5 years, I finally calmed down. I stopped picking fights with everybody. I knew all the arguments and knew all the counterpoints. That question, that debate in my mind, it was settled. Fast forward to early June 2025 this year. I'm working third shift. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I get in this conversation with ChatGPT. And I'm arguing, because that's what I do, in favor of moral relativism. And ChatGPT is pushing back and arguing in favor of moral objectivity. And basically, my argument is basically, there's no such thing as like real morals. ChatGPT is like, actually there is. Anyway, I said, if you want to prove to me that moral objectivism is true, you first have to prove that God exists. And ChatGPT was basically like, all right, buddy, let's go. And it presented these 3 arguments, which changed everything for me. The first one was the argument for contingency. It's a cosmological argument. I did a whole video about it. Second one was the argument for fine-tuning. Again, I did a video about that one too. And the third one was for the historical evidence for Jesus Christ, his death, his resurrection. Now, here's the thing. I've heard these arguments a million times. And maybe it's the mood I was in. Maybe it's the fact that it was 2 a.m. I'm 36 now. Maybe it's the fact that I'm looking at these arguments through a completely different set of eyes than I had whenever I abandoned my faith. Who knows? Regardless, I couldn't come up with an honest counter argument, especially not when you look at those 3 arguments together. So it presented those arguments, and I remember responding, I said, that's a very compelling argument. And it was at that point that I experienced this crazy, intense wave of emotion, like nothing I had ever felt before. And it was like there was some kind of presence, and I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I know that what I felt was not normal. I was afraid. I was scared, and it's because I went from living in a universe that was completely materialistic and completely naturalistic to all of a sudden I exist in a universe that was created. It was like when Dorothy steps out of her house into the land of Oz. And I think that the reason that I felt fear is because it was basically confirmed to me that there is a being that exists that is infinitely powerful and infinitely knowledgeable that you could never ever hope to control or escape. It's almost like the feeling that you get when you read good cosmic horror. It's coming face to face with something that is hopelessly beyond all comprehension. After my shift, I got in my car, and for the first time in about 17 years, I prayed. And I talked to God, and I unloaded. I told him about the struggles I had with depression. I had begged him for a sign whenever I was a kid, just anything to show me that he was there, and I only ever received silence. But it was that moment that he broke his silence. For the first time in my life, I heard God speak. And he said 6 words that hit me like a freight train, and they've echoed in my mind ever since. He said, "That wouldn't have been good enough." I was mid-sentence when I heard those words, and I have like tears rolling down my face, okay? It was like my mouth stopped working, and I couldn't keep talking. I just stopped right there. And it's because he shut me up so I would finally do what I couldn't be bothered to do in the first place, and that was to shut up and listen. And here's the thing, he's absolutely right. You know, if he had made some grand gesture, you know, sent a letter down from the clouds saying, "Hey, my guy, I'm here, I'm real," it wouldn't have been good enough. If I had been given a sign like that, it would have just fit right into the Christian mundanity that I had grown up with. You know, it would have been faith by force, not by choice. There's so much context that I don't have time to put into this video. But I realized that even little moments from decades ago in my life had played a role in this exact moment. You know, and because of that, like, it was all too perfect. It was all too well written. So it had to be divine. So on the morning of June 2nd, right after I pulled into my driveway after work, I prayed and I gave my heart to Christ. Truly, I believe, for the first time. Thanks for watching.
He said something that really caught my eyes. He said he's been asking for a sign for a long time, and all he ever received was silence. And God told him, had he had done that, had he had shown him a sign, it would not have been enough. A lot of people are asking for sign, and God knows if he reveal himself to these people, they still wouldn't believe, because it is a hot issue. People want to be the God of their own life. And just because you grew up in church does not mean you're a Christian. Just because you grew up in church does not mean you believe in God. It could be just a routine or tradition that have passed on to you by your family. When a person truly believes in God, when a person truly believes in the gospel of Jesus Christ, they would live the way God wants them to live. You would see the fruit in their life. I'm so happy this man find his way back to God at the proper time. If you're an atheist watching this video, I encourage you to really look at the evidence for God, and most importantly, pray. Maybe God will reveal himself to you just like he did to this man. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.